and we try to walk arms up over the head, et cetera, get into our offensive positions from mount. For me, or for me, I just fucking roadhouse the guy. I just roadhouse everyone from mount because it's like the best move, really.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Delbra.
Hey guys, welcome to the Everyday Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Everyday Jiu-Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu-Jitsu. Today, by popular demand, we are going to talk about the kipping escape. Maybe one of the most underappreciated, underutilized, and most important movements in Jiu-Jitsu. Before we talk about the kipping escape, please like, share, subscribe. If you like the content, support the show by checking out the links in the bottom. Buy yourself an EJJP mug or sweater, something cool. Let them know that you listen to the show. Also check out my online academy and my kids' book. Thank you guys for the support. Okay, so people have been leaving comments on my YouTube episode comment section about the kipping escape. They want me to do an episode on the kipping escape, and I've been doing the kipping escape now for about 2 years, and I've noticed a huge change in just the way that people control me from the bottom when I started using this movement. It is a difficult move to wrap your head around, but once you get it, it's kind of like riding your bike. You're going to use it all the time, especially in no-gi. I would say that due to the lack of friction in no-gi, the kipping escape is much more effective, but you can still utilize it somewhat in the gi. Just understand that if somebody's grabbing your gi and you're trying to kip, sometimes their grips will neutralize the kip as well as the friction. But I really believe that it's, like I said, one of the most underappreciated and misunderstood movements in jiu-jitsu. When you think about the basic movements of jiu-jitsu, like day one white belt class, fundamentals class, what are we going to teach these people? Usually we're going to teach them bridges, shrimps. Okay. Probably not inversions on day one, but obviously like these are the core movements that we want to work on in jiu-jitsu when we're teaching beginners pin escapes. And I've even heard Ryan Hall talk on the podcast, a podcast before, about how he believes shrimping isn't even real, how it doesn't even exist. And there may be truth to that. Like when you're shrimping down the mats, a lot of the time what we're doing is we're not really learning how to use a knee elbow escape to escape a pin, but rather we're just getting good at that movement. And we don't even know the context of a shrimp. We don't know when we're going to use it or how to effectively do it. I'll have a moment of transparency and say that I actually misunderstood the shrimp altogether and when it would be used until I watched Danaher's Pin Escape DVD. And when he starts talking about how that move is basically done as a line drill at the beginning of class, and people don't really know why they're doing it or how to actually use it in a live situation. Usually we're going to use it to escape positions like mount, side control, and probably the most common use of the move would be like a half guard control when you're pinned chest to chest in the half guard. These are very, very important times to use the shrimp movement. But does that mean that the shrimp movement itself, the line drill down the mat, will actually translate into a live situation and help you escape from a pin? Maybe, right? I think to truly use a move like that, you need to actually have a partner on top of you pinning you so you can feel someone's body on top of you while you're trying to move your knee into position and get that knee elbow connection. I would say that is like the most common move that is taught in jiu-jitsu to escape. And what do you need to do a shrimp? To do a shrimp, you need to plant your feet on the floor, right? You need to start to get your butt off the mat, escape your hips, and then bring your knee inside. The wonderful thing about a kip is you don't need to plant your feet in base at all. What a kip is if you've never used it before, I think by now everyone knows what that is. But if you don't know what a kip is, basically you're going into a complete concave position, like a banana shape or a rocking horse, and you're basically going to start vibrating and shaking. And the goal is to become so round and create disconnection through this vibration that your partner starts to lose connection to you. And then you can use this movement to get your knees back to the inside position. And so benefits of this move are you don't need to put your feet on the floor. You don't need to generate base to do the move. Usually you can just do it right there on the spot. Plus, have you ever been stuck in half guard and you try and bridge into your partner and then your legs open up and your partner just easily steps into mount? This is a problem with bridging. Sometimes when you bridge, you do a big explosive bridge, your legs tend to open, you lose control of your partner's leg and they can pass your guard in that moment. Whereas when you kip, your knees and your feet are essentially going to be tied together. So if your partner's leg is inside your legs, you're not really susceptible to an easy guard pass using the kip. There's a funny story. I know Danaher talks about it where he was teaching Gary Tonin how to kip, and I think it took Gary like 1 or 2 months, and it was a move where basically Gary was ready to like give up and not use it. Of course, Gary Tonin's like a legend in jiu-jitsu, one of the most exciting grapplers of all time, and finally one day it clicked. It was like riding a bike, and then he got it, and like we've seen Gary use the kipping escape in competition. I've seen him, and I'm pretty sure I've seen Oliver Taza as well, like basically just give mount to their opponents in competition back in the day, and he'd just give them mount, and the guy would mount him, and then he'd kip and go into a leg lock and heel hook them because nobody knew leg locks back then. Pretty funny. But long story short, the moral of the story is don't give up on the kipping escape. I always tell my students, and I teach kipping escapes to kids, I teach it to fundamentals students, that I always tell them, don't give up on this move. Even if it doesn't feel right today, that doesn't mean that it's not effective. It doesn't mean that it can't be like game changing, especially when it comes to things like guard retention and pin escapes, which really, when we're talking about what is important in jiu-jitsu, pin escapes are not, it's not as exciting and as fun as choking people out and leg locking people, but as something that is valuable, it is definitely one of the most valuable things you can learn. That's why I always prioritize the fundamental things like escaping submissions, pins, guard retention, those types of things. So definitely don't give up on the kipping escape. And I remember when I was first trying to learn the kipping escape, I was hitting like a wall. Like it wasn't working. I was getting frustrated with the move. And I was watching these guys on these, guys like Gordon Ryan, Oliver Taza, like I said, a lot of the Danaher guys. I actually think that they really pioneered this movement because I didn't really see the movement a lot beforehand, before they really started coming onto the scene. But I remember watching them and being frustrated and thinking like, man, why can't I do that? Like they're making it look so easy. And the awesome thing about the kipping escape, let's say you're escaping mount, is you're going to go right into your partner's legs and start going from defense to offense, which is, really, really important in jiu-jitsu, being able to turn the tide in the offensive cycle. And this is what Gordon and Danaher and all these guys are constantly preaching is you don't just want to go from a defensive cycle to a neutral cycle where you can be attacked again, but you want to go right back into an offensive cycle where you are the attacker and you're immediately putting your partner into a defensive cycle. So that's one of the benefits of a kipping escape as well. Again, I'm hoping with the end of this episode, you have some ideas, or at least maybe a couple of little details that you can take to the gym and try to improve your kipping escape right away, because it really is important. And I'm also going to include in the show notes a link to a video that I made on YouTube. Just my overview, if you like visuals, on the kipping escape and how it can help you. Okay. So again, like I said, I've been using it for quite a while now, and definitely is a movement that every no-gi grappler needs to have, I would say, nowadays. It's definitely going to be easier in no-gi because in the gi, there is lots of friction, and that can be more difficult to create that initial disconnection with your partner. But once you create that disconnection, the kipping escape it's almost like quicksand. When you're on top and you're trying to hold someone down and they've begun their kip, and they've created that initial disconnection, it's very, very difficult to remain in a mount position. For example, you start to feel like it's slipping through your fingers, and you just can't maintain the position. So let's talk about the different types of kips. There are kips where you can send your partner directly overhead, and then there's kips where we kip off to the side. Generally, for me, I recommend kipping off to the side. I've always had more success kipping off to the side. Plus, when you kip off to the side, one of your partner's legs will just naturally present itself after the kip. So when you go into things like ashigarami, leg locks, or X guard or whatever, we don't really want our partner on our center line. So when we kip our partner overhead, we're still going to have to displace their weight to one side and choose a leg to entangle. Whereas if we take them to one side. Now that leg is already just there for us. Also, you can kip, you can set up your kip a couple different ways. And this is maybe, I would say, where I kind of had like an aha moment when I was learning the kipping escape. And that's like, how are we going to set this movement up? If you are in mount and you just try to do a kip when your partner's on top of you, it's going to be very, very difficult. You're going to need an initial Kazushi to create the kipping escape. And just like any escape from any pin, the fundamental Kazushi movement that we use is usually a bridge. Okay, bridge will set up our kipping escape, and we can bridge straight up and go into a kip straight up and overhead, or we can bridge slightly to the side and get a kip working to the side. And I think that is probably the better way to go. You can kip straight overhead, but it is not easy, especially if your partner's really holding you in mount. So the type of bridge that I like to use for a kip is not a big explosive bridge where we're trying to like complete like an upa sweep. You're like bridging as hard as you can, trying to literally reverse your partner. It's not like that. As a landmark or as something for me to think about when I'm trying to bridge to the side, I'm thinking about my partner's knee just coming off the mat. So it doesn't have to be a bridge where, you know, we're bridging and looking over our shoulder and like doing this big explosive movement that costs us a lot of energy. It's literally just like tilting from side to side. And you can practice this movement. You don't even need to look where you're bridging. You can just sort of move your partner from side to side. Whoop, hit the mic. And get the one knee coming off the floor. When the one knee comes off the floor, that's really all you need. And then when that happens, you're going to go from a convex position, a bridging position, into a concave position immediately. So this concave position is really, really important for certain tasks in jiu-jitsu. Anytime I use ashigarami, I'm in a concave position. Seated guard, we're in a concave position. And when we're kipping, we need to be in a concave position. So what does this mean? It means bringing our knees to our chest and bringing our chin and our shoulders as round as possible towards our knees. So that's so important. We need to not just round our butt, but we need to make sure that we're tucking our head and our chin in as well. So it's like your your shoulders and your hips both need to work to concave, and you're using your core a lot for the kipping escape. Your core and your hip flexors are really going to be taxed during the kipping escape. So, you know, in jiu-jitsu, if you've done it for many years, you probably have a decently strong core. If your core is very weak, kipping escape might be a little bit of a difficult thing to do. But I always see it as a common problem that people try to kip, they become round at the hips, but their shoulders lie flat on the mat. And for whatever reason, when you lie flat on your mat, with your head on the mat and your shoulders are flat, it's very, very difficult to kip. So it involves your entire body becoming as round as you can, like I said, like a banana or a rocking chair. That's kind of the posture that we're trying to take. So we're going from a bridge right into a concave position. And I find that doing that is difficult because it's hard to make our body go from one position to the complete opposite, which is a concave position. And it does take practice, but we want to make sure that we're practicing that bridging from side to side, getting the one knee off the floor, and then going right into a concave position. There's another way we can do a kip. And if you watch Gordon, when he teaches kipping escapes, he uses this method a lot. And that's using like a swinging method with your legs. So he's almost like swinging back and forth to generate off balance. So in this way, you don't even need to plant your feet on the floor. You just need to move your legs from side to side, again, with the goal to get your partner one knee off the floor. And then we go into that concave position and we start kipping. And so this is a move where I do think, like static drilling does help, at least at first, because it's a very difficult movement to get. And then obviously, just like anything else, as soon as you start to get the mechanics of the move, you start to see some success, you can start to add resistance. Okay. So yeah, we can use methods where we're swinging our feet side to side to create the off balance, and we can use bridging methods. For me, I've always preferred bridging methods. I find that it is a lot easier to displace your partner's weight, but depending on the size of my partner and what I'm trying to do, I might use either or. Okay. They're both very important. Okay, there was one moment too that absolutely clicked for me when I started watching Danaher's instructional. The DVD that I was watching was called Philosophy of Pin Escapes, New Philosophy of Pin Escapes. And Danaher has this series where it's like a new philosophy. He also has one that's called A New Philosophy of Submission Escapes. And just the whole idea is we are escaping a pin or a submission and going right into offense. So that's the great thing about the kipping escape. I presume you're going to be using it probably from a mount position. And when that happens, because your partner's legs are straddling your body, we can go right into leg entanglements. And that's one of the great benefits of using the kipping escape from mount, or a partner that's got us mounted. The moment that clicked for me was when I realized that I was actually, we're going to talk about common mistakes later on in the episode, but this is one of them. People generally, when they do a kipping escape, if I was to ask you to do like a shrimp and a knee elbow escape from mount, you're probably going to be pushing your partner's hips and belt down towards your legs because you're trying to make space and scoot out and get your bottom knee inside. And now that your bottom knee is inside, we can go to half guard, we can go to ashi, we can keep hip escaping and going into like a close guard if we can. So traditional methods of mount escapes generally lead us towards actions where our frames on our partner's hips are pushing them down towards our legs. But in the kipping escape, we want the opposite action. In the kipping escape, if you push down towards your own legs when your partner is on top and you're trying to kip, you're actually going to kill your kip. And the reason being, again, another important landmark here, you want your two knees pulling towards your chest past your belt line. And that's a critical detail that we need to do we need to have that to be successful in the kipping escape is we need our knees to be connected to our partner's butt or tailbone more specifically, and pull our partner's tailbone towards our face. What we cannot do is counteract this with frames with our hands that push our partner's hips towards our knees. Anytime your knees get forced below your belt line, your kip is dead. You cannot do it. And so the kip works best when your partner is like cross facing you and crushing you, and leaning forward heavy on your face. That is going to allow you to pull your knees to your chest and create a kipping action. So anytime you're pushing your partner's hips down and away, you're actually pushing your own knees away, which will kill your kip. And so I was trying to do the kip, but I was pushing into my own legs while I was pulling my knees in. And so the pulling of my knees and the pushing of my hands are counteracting each other. And the result is I'm getting very, very little effect. When I started thinking about my hands guiding my partner's hips up and over my shoulders, that is when I started to see real success with the kipping escape. And this is something that Danner highlights in the instructional, and I found it very beneficial. So for me, that was like one of the moments where it really clicked for me when I realized the positioning of my, I should say, where I should be displacing my partner's weight over my shoulder. When I do a kipping escape, I almost think about like a backward shoulder roll. Like I should be guiding everything, including my own hips and my hands and my partner's hips over my shoulder. Okay. And I want to think about when I'm doing this movement, if I start to do a kip and it's going over one of my shoulders and I'm starting to disconnect my partner's hips from my body, but I feel like I can't quite finish the kip, just change direction and go towards the other shoulder. And so this is something that I got from Gordon when he taught the kipping escape. I can't remember what instructional, probably, pillars of defense, pin escapes or whatever it is. He's talking about kipping over one shoulder. If it fails, keep kipping to the other shoulder, keep kipping to the other shoulder. And keep in mind, at no point can my knees go below my belt line. My knees constantly need to be pulling towards my chest with a round back and round posture, and my upper body needs to be round, and my hands are working to guide my partner over my left and right. So that is like a really important movement in the kipping escape. As far as your hand positioning, like I've seen some different hand positions with kipping escapes. For me, my favorite one that I have a lot of success with is always the box frame. The box frame is how I like to escape mount. That's going to be one forearm across our partner's waist, where the elbow doesn't drift across the center line. And then I reinforce that hand with my other hand, and I make sure that my bracing hand, the elbow is inside my partner's knee. So if you can't get an elbow inside your partner's knee when you're trying to escape mount, you're never going to get out of mount. Because if your partner's knees dominate the inside space of my armpits, now my elbows don't have any inside position, and now I can't really stop my partner from sliding up into a high mount. So that's a crucial battle. This is the most like day one fundamental white belt detail is if you're escaping mount and you're whatever frames you have, you need to have at least one elbow inside your partner's knees. If you don't do that, you're not going to do any kind of kipping escapes. There are other grips that we can use, or frames, I should say. I've seen people do 2 hip posts, where we're taking our 2 palms and framing our partner's hip bones. This is a great grip as well. Okay. This really allows us to get like a good pressing movement. I've even seen people take fists and kip with two fists punching the hips and use that to great effect. I would say the disadvantage to this is if your partner is really close to you in mount and you try and push the hips, if your elbows flare out, you'll be susceptible to underhooks. That's why I prefer to go into a box frame because I feel like a box frame just gives me better structures. It prevents my partner from punching into underhooks. But if I do start with a kip where I have a box frame and I displace my partner and I'm like halfway through the kip, I'm almost out, I may very well switch to two hip posts because I can get greater extension with two hip posts. So pros and cons of how you what kind of grips you're going to be using on your partner's hips during a kipping escape. Just be aware of the pros and cons. For me, box frame is the clear winner. That's the one that I use the most for sure. But you can use double hip posts as well. You can even use your knuckles to push your partner. Just make sure that we're not pushing our partner's hips into our own legs. Again, this is one of the most important things that will really, I think, help people learn how to kip is it's not a knee elbow escape. We are not pushing our own knees away. We're trying to bring everything up and over our shoulder towards in a diagonal fashion over our left and right shoulders. Our arms should be guiding up into that direction. We should not be putting the force into our own legs. That will totally cancel your kip. That will ruin the kipping escape. Let's talk about leg positioning. So again, it might be difficult without visuals. So you're just gonna have to listen to my words or check out the video on the bottom because I will include it. But for what helps me is when I'm moving my body, I'm thinking about so we've off balanced our partner with a slight bridge. Let's say one knee is off the floor. We go into this concave position. Our shoulders are completely round. We have a box frame or double hip posts, and our knees are pulling into our partner's tailbone. We're ready to kip. Okay. When we're in this position, I think it's so important that our feet are above the line of our knees. So if you can imagine yourself in this, concave position, you don't want your feet below your knees. Have your feet almost up in the air. Like your feet are almost trying to touch the ceiling in a way. And when we're kipping, I like to use the smallest kips possible. I like to use kips that are similar to that of a vibration rather than like a pumping. Some people, when they do kips, they do these big kips. So you see their feet go up, down, up, down, up, down. And just understand that you're using a ton of energy when you do this. Plus, every time your feet come down, that's an opportunity for your partner's hips to come back down as well. What I like is I like a kip that, and I'll sort of illustrate it with my hands. My hand is my foot. I don't want my foot to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I want my foot to go up, down a little, up more, down a little more, up, down, up. And every time I do this, I try to get my feet to go higher and higher. So it's like I'm elevating my feet more and more and more as I vibrate. And again, when I say vibrate, I mean like the smallest movement possible, like a shaking action is enough to work. You do not need these big exaggerated kips where your partner doesn't really get off balance because every time your feet come back down, they're settling back into position. I want to lift them up, drop my feet slightly higher than I'd had them before, up again, higher than I had before, drop them slightly higher than I had them before, feet come higher, and we're constantly just building height. Another big detail is having your feet and your knees connected. An analogy Danaher uses that I think is really, really effective and helpful for me to visualize is imagine your feet and your knees are tied together. That is going to help you see and visualize what your legs should look like during kip. If your legs are open during a kip, or even worse, if your legs are working independently, like they're just kicking in midair, like a newborn baby on the operating table, that is not going to work at all. You need your legs working together. So it's almost like a fluttering movement and everything is tied together. For me, when I kip, I found that when I do it just naturally, I cross my ankles. You can do that. You don't have to do that. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure that your knees and your feet are together and vibrating up and over your shoulder. The goal when we're kipping is to try and elevate our partner up and over to our left or our right. So as they're moving over our left or our right, I'm still pulling my knees into their tailbone and my hands are guiding them toward that direction. with the overall goal of me being able to eventually slide my frames up, my knee elbow, my box frame up, and trying to connect my knees to my elbows. And then ideally I can entangle one of the legs. Um, Again, this is a huge detail I'm about to give you guys. I think a lot of people's kip fails because of this very detail. I've had students in the room struggle all class to do the kipping escape, and then I'm like, okay, show me how you're doing it. I watch how they're doing it. I'm like, oh, this is the one thing we need to fix right here. If you fix this, it should probably work. And we go over it, and sure enough, now they can kip. It's crazy. Like I've seen people just change like that. And that is your knees in connection with your partner's butt, and more specifically, their tailbone. So we don't just want to connect our knees to our partner's butt anywhere. I want to go like right up the middle, like right into the tailbone is the ideal position when we're kipping. And this detail, basically, if my again, I'll show a visual for those of you listening. You're just going to have to visualize this. But if my partner's butt is expressed through this palm, and this hand is now their knees, my knees, I do not want my knees to push into my partner's butt and then disconnect. So when people kip, when they don't really understand the mechanics, this will happen. So their knees will smack onto their partner's butt and disconnect. Okay, every time you disconnect, your partner can now sit their butt back down. So you're off balancing them for a second, and then they settle in. And then yes, again, and they settle in. And every time you disconnect your knees from your partner's butt, you're using a lot of energy. Your core is being taxed, and your partner's just sort of like going on this bumpy ride, but he's never getting displaced enough where you can actually escape. So one of the biggest things that we want to do when we're dealing with the kip and we're trying to make it effective is our knees are not disconnecting from our partner's tailbone. They are constantly pulling and then just vibrating. So if it shouldn't be like a disconnection, it should be a connection and then just like a vibrating action as we're guiding them up over the shoulder. I swear, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see people do when they're using the kipping escape is their knees disconnect from their partner's butt. If you pull with your knees and just bring your partner forward, that is going to be what we want for a kipping escape. Solid connection throughout the entire movement with our knees, and then our feet just kip, 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 just flutter, like vibrate, like a very, very small movement. And again, our feet are above our knees, right? So if my knuckles are my knees and my fingertips are my feet, my gross witch's hands, my jiu-jitsu hands, I want my feet just kipping and lifting up. I do not want my feet below my knees because now it's very difficult to generate that upward diagonal trajectory that I'm trying to bring my partner over my shoulder. Right. And again, if I take them over my shoulder and it starts to fail, I'm going to switch directions, take them to the other side. Meanwhile, I never lose my concave position. I never let my knees disconnect from my partner's butt. Okay, those are the basic mechanics of the kipping escape. Guys, let's talk about when are we going to kip? Like, when we're escaping the mount, can we always use the kipping escape? Is it always there? And the answer is no. You have to sort of play a dilemma with your partner. I mean, your partner's playing a dilemma with you too in terms of controlling you, and you're playing a dilemma with them as to how you're going to escape. So it's going to depend where your partner pushes their weight. If your partner is taking and this, guys, this is all assuming that you have your arms on the inside and you have good inside frames on your partner's hips. You have one elbow inside your partner's knees. If you don't have that, you're not getting out. So just as a caveat, if you're in mount and you're doing this shit where you're like locking your hands behind your partner's back, you're never fucking getting out of mount. You should go back to fundamentals class. You always have to work your arms back to the inside and manage distance by framing your partner's hips and having your one elbow inside your partner's leg. So we're always going to work with that, that structure. If your arms are on the outside, you fucked up even more and you got to recover and get your arms back to the inside. So assuming we have good arm position, your partner can choose. Are they going to post their hands on the mat and push their ass back into your legs? Or are they going to come forward and crowd you with like a cross face, underhook, that type of pressure? So when they are crowding your upper body, when they're trying to crush your face with a cross face, perfect time to kip. Okay, because they're coming forward, you can now pull your knees past your belt line. That's the time to kip. Okay. Again, I always recommend you use some kind of a kazushi. The one that works best for me is just a small bridge that gets their one knee off the floor and then go into a concave position, but you can sway your legs as well. If my partner realizes that I'm going into a kip, a very good response for them is to just post two hands on the mat nice and wide and sit their ass back. So they're using like their core, they're pushing off their arms, and they're driving their hips into my knees. When this happens, it kills my kip because now my knees cannot drift higher than my belt line. So kipping is dead. This is now where we play a dilemma. We start going into our basic day one white belt mount escapes. We go into our knee elbow escapes and our leg trap escapes, right? Maybe you know other escapes. Love to hear them in the comments, but those are kind of the three main mount escapes I use: kip, knee elbow, and leg trap. So if they're pushing weight back into our hips, we're using leg trap escapes. If they're crowding our upper body, we're using kipping escapes. Pretty simple, right? And so when you're escaping mount, and anything in jiu-jitsu really, but like for those of you who are newer, when you're escaping mounts, when you're escaping pins, when you're escaping submissions, you're not trying to do the escape that your coach taught you. You are feeling your partner and seeing, what are they giving to me? What are they trying to do? What is their goal here? If you know your partner's goal, it's way easier for you to find a solution to the problem. If you're just like, oh, I remember we did a knee elbow escape the other day, so I'm going to try that, and they're crushing your face and flattening you, you're not going to be able to do a knee elbow escape. If they push their ass back onto you and you try and do a kipping escape, you're not going to be able to do a kipping escape. You have to feel what your partner's doing in order to make the correct decision. And that's how you're going to get really good at jiu-jitsu, is not, regurgitating moves you drilled over and over again, but actually understanding, what does your partner want? What are they trying to do to you? So the mount escape dilemma: hips are pushed back into us. We go into our knee elbow escape and our leg trap escapes. And when they're crushing our upper body, that's when we go into our kipping escapes. So again, I'll just reiterate common mistakes that people do with kipping escapes. I've kind of mentioned them as we talked about the mechanics of the move, but I just want to reiterate it again. Common mistakes of kipping escapes. First of all, knee disconnection. Your knees are not connected to your partner's butt and vibrating, but they're smacking into your partner's butt and constantly disconnecting. When that happens, your partner's never going to feel like they're off balance, and they're just going to settle into mount. Okay, so you really need to be pulling your knees into your partner's butt rather than smacking your knees into your partner's butt. Knee positioning isn't accurate. So let's say this is a mistake where your knees are wide open. If your knees are wide open, your kip is going to be garbage because your two knees need to work as a team to pull into your tailbone. If your feet are disconnected, again, imagine your feet are tied together and so are your knees. For me, I think, just as like a reminder, I cross my ankles when I do a kip. I find when I cross my ankles is just way easier. Maybe it's because I'm connecting like a kinetic chain between my two legs and they're working as a team. I feel like when I cross my ankles, my kip is a lot stronger than when I don't, but you don't have to cross your ankles. Your feet need to be together though, and so do your knees. Okay. So your knees and your feet need to be tied together. Plus, you need to have your feet higher than your knees. At least I find that's a very important detail. If you don't have that, it's hard to create that overhead off balance in the diagonal trajectory. Not rounding your shoulders. This is a huge mistake. I see guys try to do the kip and they have a round butt. They're pulling their knees to their chest, but they're lying flat on their back. You need to engage your entire body and become extremely round and concave. So to do this, we need to round our shoulders as well, pulling our knees to our chest, pulling our chin to our knees, and then creating our vibrating action while we're dominating the inside space with our arms. So a lot of people aren't rounding their shoulders, and that fucks up their kip. I know that as well. Their kips are too big. So this is another big mistake. Their feet they feel like to do a big kip, they need to do these big kipping movements. Costs you a ton of energy and they're not really effective. Instead, think of a vibration that can just get to that, like, there's like a tipping point when you're kipping. Tipping point. There's a tipping point where you're starting your kip and then like your partner's still connected to you, they're still in mount, and then all of a sudden the mount disconnects. And this is kind of like a crucial moment in your escape. If you can take your partner a little bit past this point, they'll never recover mount. But if you lose this point, they'll sink their hips back down, they'll recover mount, and you'll just use a bunch of energy and you'll be like, oh, fuck, like, it's morally defeating. You used energy. It sucks. Remember, we talked about this. If I go into a kipping escape and my partner pushes their hips down into my legs, I need to immediately switch off to knee elbow escapes and leg trap escapes. How are they going to respond? They're probably going to grab my head, try and flatten me out again. As they bring their weight forward, we go back to kipping escapes. This is the dilemma of the kip, right? But if your kips are too big, then you never really get that initial, you never really get to that perfect tipping point where like, oh, I feel like I can like effortlessly shake you off of me. It all starts with that vibration, not a big kip, but a vibration. So tie your knees together, your feet together, knees in the center of the butt, and start vibrating, and think about your arms guiding your partner over your shoulder. We never want to push down into the hips. We always want the trajectory of force to be over our shoulders in a diagonal fashion. It goes one way, it fails. Okay, we're staying around, and we're just gonna start turning to our other side and taking our partner over the other shoulder. Um, and one of the last things, it's changing your posture from convex to concave. So essentially going from like a bridging posture to a kipping posture. People struggle with that, and it just takes practice. Make sure when you're doing that you're tucking your head in as much as you can, tucking your chin in, and it just drill the shit out of it, right? Again, I'll include a video on the bottom, but I would say for me, what works really well is a slight bridge into a kip, and I'm focusing on my knees being right into my partner's tailbone rather than like onto their hamstring or something crazy like that. Knees onto the tailbone is always where we want to go for a kip from mount. And last but not least, relying on their arms. I've seen a lot of people kind of abuse their strength when they're working with a smaller partner who's mounted them. And when you have a smaller partner who's mounting on you, you'll feel sometimes like you can just like bench press them off you. And honestly, that does work, but it's not really, let's imagine our partner is the exact same size as us or bigger than us. Are we going to be able to just bench press them off of us from mount? Probably not, because if you could, that's what everyone would do from mount, right? You can't just push someone off you. So I think a big mistake people do is they rely on their arms too much when they're kipping. The real movement should be from our round body and our knees pulling into our partner's butt, and just focusing on that. Like, just think of like a backward shoulder roll where we're taking our partner over our shoulders to the left and the right, rather than just like bench pressing them. Because like I said, if you're big, you can abuse that, but don't rely on it ever. Okay, let's talk about kipping from other situations. When else can we kip? I use kipping all the time to escape half guard pins. Like pinching my knees together around the trapped leg, pulling my knees into my partner's butt, and shaking really helps you get your knees back to the inside and helps you escape back to like a knee shield position. So that is one of my biggest uses of a kipping escape for sure. Kipping out of pins. And another thing you can use it in is like a side control situation where my partner's controlling me from side control, and I'm trying to get my knee inside and use like a side guard, get my knee to my elbow. If my knee won't fit in, often using a kipping movement will help me get that knee in, because that little bit of disconnection kind of moves my partner in, gives me a little bit of space where I can slip my knee to the inside of their hip, and now I can work on my escapes from side guard. So last example, there's a bunch of examples. Another one would be like a side control. Sometimes your partner's got a side control on you, and they've got this type of side control where they have like a tight waist where they're wrapping around your body and a cross face. In this position, it can be very difficult to move away. You can't do a knee elbow because there's a physical barrier with their arm in a tight waist preventing you from hip escaping. So in this type of situation, you actually want to kip away from your partner and make them post a hand. And then from there, you can start to work to build your frames back to the inside. That's one that I learned from watching Gordon's instructionals. I think it's an underutilized pin escape. And I think if you're getting pinned in side control with a cross face and a tight waist, it could be very, very, very difficult. So rather than an underhook, an actual like a tight waist that goes around your torso, you will never be able to knee elbow escape out of that pin. So you have to start using a kip to make your partner post one of their hands. And then from there, you can work back to inside. And then the last example, I see this is such a useful example of the kip escape, is when your partner is in mount and they switch to technical mount. So imagine, you're doing a knee elbow escape and you're getting on your side and your partner switches to technical mount, right? Technical mount is where we have like one knee up, one knee down when we're controlling mount, right? It's very hard to knee elbow escape out of this position because the foot is straight up and down and it's planted. So the foot doesn't necessarily need to move when you shrimp. There are other ways to get out of there, but I find the easiest one for sure, and the one that allows us to go into offense, is the kip. So in this case, we're going to initiate a side kip where we face away from our partner, and then that little bit of disconnection gets the ball rolling, and then we start turning our knees towards our partner, and we just continue our kip. We land right in a leg entanglement. So side kipping is where we're kipping off to the side, and then eventually facing our partner. This is definitely one of the most useful times for kipping escape is the technical mount as well. All right, how are we going to shut down the kipping escape? You know, I've trained with people where every time I would mount them, they just kip me off of them. I'm like, fuck, this guy's got like an amazing kipping escape. Every time I do this, I end up in a leg entanglement. It can be really frustrating, right? You do all this hard work to get chest to chest and then pass the guard and go to mount. And as soon as you get there, they just immediately kip you off of them. What's so important to understand, like I said earlier in the episode, is every time somebody tries to kip you off of them, they need your weight coming forward. So what you need to do is post your hands and sit your butt back. When I do this too, I'm not just pushing off my arms and sitting my butt back, but I'm engaging my core and really trying to keep my core tight because, how you engage your posture in all positions really affects how effective your posting is, how affecting your limbs, how effective your limbs work. Always use and never neglect the engagement of your core whenever you're doing any movement in sports. So I'm using my core and I'm pushing back onto their legs. I'm trying to get their knees to push past their belt line, and that will neutralize the kip. And then I can know a follow up if they're good. A follow up is going to be a knee elbow or a leg trap generally. So they're going to try and get on their side. We try and keep them flat, and we try to walk arms up over the head, et cetera, get into our offensive positions from mount. For me, or for me, I just fucking roadhouse the guy. I just roadhouse everyone from mount because it's like the best move, really. Especially if you get one of the arms shelved on one of your near legs. If you can imagine a situation where like you're gonna roll into an omoplata from mount, and you have your partner's arm isolated on your hip, and your knee is up by their head, and you have a crossface, this is the perfect time to start threatening roadhouses. Uh, Throat posting and mount, so important. I can't believe we don't see it enough. Like we don't really see it that much. This is where I really got to give credit to Bernanke for kind of making throat posting mainstream as like a submission, because it is super threatening. Roadhouse is easily one of the most high percentage moves that I get. And it has definitely made my mount a lot better. So I use roadhouse grips a lot to shut down kips, especially if my partner doesn't have elbows on the inside. I'm going roadhouse every time there. Okay, let's talk about one last thing. This is going to be a really good answer for when your partner does a kipping escape. I stole this from Danaher's Anaconda Master the Move instructional. Guys, I'm watching Danaher Udagatame Master the Move right now. He's got a bunch of these Master the Move DVDs, basically for autistic folk who really want to learn like a depth of knowledge in particular moves. The Anaconda one is so dope. One thing he talks about is when someone goes into a kip, the one thing that they must do is tuck their chin in and have their hands framing your hips. So this is the perfect time to roll into a front headlock. So I started using this, and man, it is effective because every time your partner goes into a kip, they expose themselves to a front headlock. And what is the other option? The other option is maybe I try to hold mount, maybe I'm successful, or maybe they continue their kipping escape and they start entangling my legs. That's not what we fucking want. A second ago, I was mounting you and roadhousing you with one hand, and now all of a sudden you're attacking my legs with like a heel hook. Like this is horrible. This is a disaster, right? So anytime I see that my partner's going into a kip, let's say it's a sub only situation, perfect time to dive on the head. Who cares if you get swept, right? Alternatively, in a point situation, it's effective too, because if you get really good at playing front heads, let's say you dive into the front head and you roll through and you end up in this inverted north-south headlock position. I mean, this is a position we want to be in if we want to finish anacondas. Alternatively, we can just kip up and come up on top, and from top position, we're just attacking front headlock. So it's it's actually pretty hard for your partner to sweep you from here unless you absolutely suck at front headlocks. So I've been diving on front headlocks when people defend my kipping escapes. This is new to me, and I didn't think about doing that until I watched Danaher master the move. Thank you, John Danaher, for always helping me with my jiu-jitsu. It is an awesome answer to the kipping escape. They start kipping, you feel like, I'm probably going to lose this. Boom, dive on the headlock, roll through. They never get a sniff of your legs, and then you can start attacking front headlocks from there, playing your front headlock game, coming back up into a kneeling front headlock, going behind, taking the back. Like it's a great way to keep your attacks going from the mount position when you're losing mount. And guys, that's pretty much all I got for the kipping escape. Again, I'm going to include that video in the bottom because I want you guys to see it and have some kind of visual reference for this. I'm pretty happy with the video as far as like how it can help people that suck at kipping get decent at kipping. And I'd love to hear comments and suggestions and concerns in the comment section because I'd love a share of ideas on these episodes. Before we get out of here, I just want to remind you guys to like, share, subscribe, leave comments in the comment section. If you want to support the show, please check out the links in the bottom. If you want to see the kipping escape video, I'm going to leave that link in the bottom as well. Buy yourself some EJJP merch to support the show. Please check out my online academy and check out my kids book. If you got a little toddler running around, you're thinking about getting them into jiu-jitsu and you want a kids book that will help them begin their jiu-jitsu journey. I think it's a great book for not just, to get kids the idea of grappling, but it's very educational as well. There's a glossary in the back where we talk about jiu-jitsu terms. Check out Zara Can Do Jiu-Jitsu, guys. That's my daughter, Zara. She does jiu-jitsu, and she's almost at the gray belt level, so I'm excited about that. All right, and I'm going to leave you guys with that. Remember that EJJP, the Everyday Jiu-Jitsu podcast, everything you guys need to know about jiu-jitsu and the kipping escape, and I hope that you guys can listen to this episode and suck a little bit less at the kipping escape. Again, let me know your progress in the comments. I'm going to see you guys next week. Peace.